Hello and welcome, my little pickled gherkins. Can you tell that this top is not from Hot fucking Topic? It is not from H&M. It is not from Urban Outfitters. It is from the 90s. Because I feel like at this point it's so grey and so busted that you probably can tell that I have indeed had it since 1904. Let's just put it this way, I'm no spring chicken, not anymore. I always knew that I'd have to get just a little bit tipsy to broach the topic that I'm going to broach in this video, because it's just so vast, it's just so epic, it's so whiz pop, whiz bang, smash bang wallop, it's big, it's so full of wormholes that I just need to get just a little bit tipsy to even begin to talk about it. It's a crazy topic that is long overdue as a theme on my channel, but my god, there's a little bit of me that's regretting even agreeing with myself to make a video on this. Let's do it. Psychological projection. It is something that comes up a lot in the realm of shadow work and in relation to shadow work. A lot of people talk about projection. A lot of other people want to know what the other people that are talking about projection are talking about. So I'm going to try to break it down in this video, and I'm going to kind of try to level with you about the different ways that it turns up and the different things that might be happening if you feel someone is projecting, or maybe you're projecting. But I do want to stress that this is a topic that probably can't be covered all in one video, and I probably will have to kind of circle back around to it at some point. But I really wanted to hit it during the month of January because there's a few shadow work videos that I want to get out in honour of my exclusive video course, 29 Shadows, which is coming out in February, and you can check below in the doobly-doo for the details on that. I'm really, really excited about it. So shadow work is kind of coming into my consciousness this month in particular, as I've been collating all of the videos for my exclusive video content that I'm putting out. And so, you know, there's a lot of things at the forefront of my mind, and projection is definitely one of those things that I've needed to bite the bullet on for a while. So I'm going to begin by talking about what exactly projection is. If you are projecting, then what you are doing is you are taking something that is actually within you that you either don't like or want to avoid or want to deny or are not actually aware of, and you are actually projecting it out onto somebody else, and you are identifying that characteristic or that tendency or that belief within them, and you are attacking it within them, or maybe praising it within them, admiring it within them, or scorning it within them, whatever the case may be. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking a part of yourself that you do not wish to integrate into your understanding of who you are, and you are putting it onto somebody else. Psychological projection is something that was kind of brought into mainstream consciousness in psychology by Freud, and it was later picked up by Jung. However, there are kind of sources that go all the way back to like the Talmud, you know, the Jewish book, the Talmud, that in mysticism and in spiritual and religious thought, which kind of convey the idea of projection. So it's certainly not a new thing, and it's certainly not something that Freud came up with. It is something that other human beings, long before Freud was even a twinkle in his daddy's eye, have actually realised is true about humankind. You know, it's something that a lot of different spiritual traditions and a lot of different fields of interest have come upon. You know, it's been stumbled upon in philosophy, it's been stumbled upon in religious texts. So it's definitely not something that Freud like invented. He didn't reinvent the wheel when he started talking about projection. However, the way that we understand it in psychology and psychoanalysis is definitely thanks to Big Daddy Freud. And then later on it was taken by Jung, and kind of he explored it as well, and it was seen to be very, very evident in many, many clients and patients at many times. It is definitely something that is seen to be evident in a lot of people, and it seems to be something that is just a running theme through the fabric of humanity, that we take what we don't want to see in ourselves and we project it upon another being. And we can look at it within them. It's like it's safe to look at it when we think it's them, but it's not safe to integrate it into our understanding of who we are. It happens quite a lot, you know, it happens quite frequently. Is it always what is happening when you are judging somebody negatively? No, and I will get to that in the context of this video, because I do feel that, you know, projection is an accusation that is bandied around a lot where it needn't be. But projection is happening a lot. It's happening a lot. You know, I have definitely fallen victim to projection, where I have looked at what I did not want to see in myself and I have labelled somebody else with that same characteristic, and I have absolutely torn them to shreds for it, only to then later realise during my shadow work that in fact the seed of it is inherent within me and I am displaying those same behaviours myself. So, you know, it's common. It's common, and I'm sure that watching this, many of you will think, yeah, I've been projecting, or I have found myself projecting before. You know, it's not something that's as rare as hen's teeth. It's something that's as common as muck, you know. Sometimes if you don't want to own a particular trait or characteristic within yourself, and you start to label somebody else with that same trait or characteristic, and you start to kind of like focus on it in them, it can be a sign that you actually do want on some level to own it within you, but it's still too dangerous, it's still too risky. So sometimes projection can be actually a sign of somebody's personal development kind of heightening, because sometimes projection can be what happens just before a breakthrough in your understanding of self. So just before you begin to see the seed of a particular trait or characteristic within you, there might be this preparation stage where you're not quite ready to accept it within yourself yet, so you go into majorly projecting it onto other people. So sometimes projection can actually be a really good positive sign that you are coming around the bend, you're coming to understand something about yourself, and you are just like inches away from having that breakthrough where you realise, oh, okay, the seed of this thing is within me, and it's within me that I need to deal with it. I need to bring it back to that place of self, you know. So sometimes it can be a really good thing. Projection is not always bad by any means. Let me give you some examples of projection in case you're kind of straggling behind a little bit, thinking, what are you talking about, and please stop drinking vodka because you're not making this any easier for my brain. I'll give you some examples of how projection can manifest, just so you're totally with me. A lot of the time, psychological projection can manifest very obviously in advice giving. Sometimes you will find that somebody is really vehemently and insistently giving you some advice. Like they're really almost, they're not only encouraging you to do something, but they're kind of demanding that you do something for your own good, you know, or to expand your horizons or whatever. And you may actually realise before they do that the advice giver is actually giving advice that they really ought to take themselves. You know, they're actually foisting advice upon others that they really should be taking themselves, and actually if they were to take their own advice, which they're too scared to take, their own life would expand and their own sense of selfhood would expand. So advice giving is a key way in which human beings project upon others. The advice and guidance that we are scared to take ourselves is very often the most vehement and insistent advice that we will level at other people. Admiration is a massive way in which people project. A lot of the dialogue that exists around the topic of projection is largely about the negative stuff, right? So judging people, berating people, mocking people, criticising people, and all that kind of thing. But actually projection can be it can be about praise, it can be about admiration, it can be about like fascination with somebody. Quite often projection exists when somebody fixates upon someone else and obsesses over someone else, or really admires them, really just like watches everything that they do and thinks, fuck, you are so cool, you are so smart, you are so ambitious, you're so, you know, ... And actually that can just as much be a form of projection. It's basically the ego's fear and unwillingness to see the greatness in self that causes one to project a great deal of admiration onto someone else. It's very easy to see somebody else's skill and capability and strength, but it's not so easy to own it and flow into it and harness it in one's own life. So quite often projection can be just as much about the admiration that we give to others as it is about the judgment that we lay upon others. That's something really important to note, because I do feel like a lot of the dialogue, like I said, that exists around projection exists around the negative stuff, like the judgments and, you know, the crappy things, you know, the criticisms and the insults. But actually a lot of people do project their greatness onto others because they're just too scared to harness it for themselves. So that can be a key form of projection also. Then you get into like the mockery, the scorn, the judgment, the insults, you know, looking at people and levelling those nasty judgments at them. That can very often be projection, you know. It's just stuff that you don't want to see in yourself, that you instead kind of microscopically pinpoint and highlight and underline in other people, and it feels safe to do that, and it actually kind of protects the ego because it makes the ego feel like 15 steps removed from this crappy thing that you don't want to admit within yourself. So you know, a lot of projection is that. It's just making judgments against other people for stuff that you actually exhibit within yourself and you actually hold within yourself, but you don't want to accept it. Making assumptions about the way that people think and feel can often be a form of projection. So for example, one key form of projection that does come up often is somebody saying something like, well, I don't really want to go to the party because I sense that so-and-so at the party doesn't really like me. Or, you know, I spoke to that person the other day and they were really just giving me this vibe that they didn't like me and they didn't want me around. Actually, that can sometimes be a form of projection where, in fact, it is the person doing the accusing that other people don't like them. It's actually that person that doesn't like the people that they're saying don't like them. See, this is why I have to drink vodka for this video, because it's so... I knew it was going to get really confusing. Okay, let me break it down. Sometimes you will insist that somebody feels a certain way about you and you will be convinced of it beyond all reasonable doubt. But when you break it down in shadow work and you dismantle it and you like fragment it and you put it apart, you look at it and you go, huh, I don't actually like that person. That's me. That's coming from me. I'm making that assumption because I feel that way about them, but I don't want to own that in myself. Maybe because I feel like it's mean, or maybe because I have no reason to dislike them. Maybe because I'm just putting my own shallow judgments onto them. But actually, like, the whole time that I've said that they don't like me, or that they're being cruel to me, or that they're being passive aggressive against me, actually they've done none of those things. I'm being mean to them. I don't like them, you know? So it's like that realization, like, oh, the whole time I've been accusing this person of X, Y, and Z, this, that, and the third. Actually, it's me that is giving that to them, and it's me that feels that about them, but I don't want to own it, so I'm trying to shift the blame. You know, so that can often be projection too. A lot of the time when you give somebody beautiful things like your support and your encouragement and your attention and your praise, you know, when you try and help somebody to feel sturdy and stable within themselves, and you help somebody to foster and harness and go after their dreams, you know, that can often be projection. It's the things that you wish that somebody would do for you, or it's the things you wish you could say and do for yourself, but you're too scared, or you don't think that you're entitled. So you very much lavish those things on others, but you remain eternally bereft of them, devoid of them. You find that you are impoverished in that way, and you're constantly like giving and you're lavishing and you're treating other people with those gorgeous, gorgeous things that you wish you could give to yourself or have from others. And that can be a really painful and a really sketchy and dangerous form of projection. Parents can sometimes unwittingly and in a very damaging way project their fantasies for their own life onto their children and invent an entire trajectory for a child that actually is just a reflection of what they deep down wanted for themselves but couldn't have. And that can be incredibly destructive, as I'm sure you can imagine, as I'm sure many of you have first-hand experience of, you know. Jung said that the greatest tragedy of any family is the shadow of the parents. And yeah, it's straight up true, you know. Parents will often live vicariously through their children and design the wonderful, fantastical, joyful life that they wanted for themselves, and actually insist that their child lives it out for them, for their own kind of perverted pleasure. It can be really, really toxic stuff. Actually, if you couldn't quite see the benefits of shadow work before I started talking about projection, I'm sure you must have some inkling of the power and the benefit of it now. Projection can get so hairy, it's ridiculous. Okay, one of the most difficult things about projection as a topic in relation to shadow is that a lot of people get into shadow work and they start to read about shadow work and they start to actively engage in shadow work, and they very quickly start to ask the question, so every single time I'm angry with somebody, or I judge somebody, or I want to avoid somebody because I don't like them, am I actually just projecting? Like every single time I dislike somebody, am I actually just seeing something within them that is really within me, and do I need to like see it within me? I think shadow work loses a lot of people at this point, because I think a lot of people kind of say to themselves, well, I don't like this trait in this person, or I don't like the way this person betrayed me, but it's not because I'm doing those things myself. Like, it's genuinely because I don't fucking like the fact that this person did this thing to me that I would never do to them. So how is that projection? You know, that doesn't make any sense. And I think it gets people quite irate, and it makes people feel pretty pissed off. Like, I think they start to think of shadow work as some kind of weird emotional circle jerk where every single thing they don't like about somebody is just something that they can find to dislike within themselves. And I think it can get confusing for that reason. I think the word projection is thrown around a hell of a lot more than it needs to be. And I also believe personally, as a teacher of shadow work and as a spiritual counsellor, that the kind of symptom of projection is very often overdiagnosed and misdiagnosed by other people upon another person, you know. It's just like projection has become some kind of accusation, some kind of like witch burning type accusation for people with emotional intelligence and a knowledge of psychology in any kind of pocketbook sense, you know. Somebody tries to say something to you about your behaviour and the first thing out of your mouth is, you're just projecting, you're just projecting. And I think it's gotten a little bit to be that way, you know, where it's something tasty to like pull out of the bag and throw at somebody's head, like, oh, you're just projecting. And I think it's all too easy to make decisions about who is projecting and what they're projecting about. I don't really think it is a lot of the time anybody else's job or business to decide when somebody else is projecting. And quite often this accusation of projection doesn't go anywhere good, you know. It misses the point quite a lot. A lot of people's issues are just way more complex than that, and I do feel like projection has become a little bit of an easy way of throwing somebody's valid concerns back at them. So how do you know if you are projecting? Well, the first thing I would say is once you become aware of psychological projection and the fact that it has a basis in reality, then you already up your chances of recognising when you are projecting by quite a long way, because you need to know that such a thing as projection actually exists before you can recognise when you're falling prey to it. If you didn't know about psychological projection before you watched this video, then you now do, and so now your chances of seeing when you're doing it have already gone up exponentially, because now you actually are armed with that understanding that you are capable of projection and that you probably do sometimes fall prey to projection. So you can start to look at it, you know, you're conscious of it, so you can catch yourself in the act of doing it. That's the real gift of understanding about projection. It's the real gift of having a knowledge of it, is that once you become aware of it, you can begin to see yourself doing it, and you have a chance to take a little pit stop and ask yourself if you're projecting. Sometimes your answer will be yes, sometimes your answer will be no, sometimes your answer will be I'm not really sure and I need a little bit more time to think about it. But whatever your answer is, you are consciously aware that such a phenomena exists and that you might fall prey to it. So you already are doing the good work to examine whether or not in a particular situation you are projecting. When you realise that you're really vehemently disliking somebody, or you have a really strong, pungent judgment of somebody, and you are aware that you might be projecting, and so the first thing that you do is to like step over onto that slip road and actually say, oh, hang on a minute, am I projecting? That is profound, profound shadow work. Even just the art of doing that changes you. It changes you at a fucking cellular level. It's unbelievable to be armed with this knowledge, and I'm so impassioned about it because it's changed me. To actually kind of be able to stand aside from myself in my vehement dislike of somebody, or my vehement judgment of somebody, even just my kind of irritation, when I'm irritated to distraction by somebody's fucking bullshit, to actually step outside, to have that out of body psychological experience and go, hey, am I projecting here? Is the seed of this stuff within me? Is this something that I can work on myself? That is game changing without a doubt. Is projection always what is happening when you are angry with somebody, or when you feel a judgment towards somebody, or when somebody is pissing you off? No. No. I really don't think so, personally. I don't always feel like it's the seed of something that consciously and actively is there within you and needs to be worked through within you. Not always, no. So if it's not projection, what is it? What is it? What does it mean when you really vehemently dislike somebody, when you are really, really angry with somebody, or when you feel a deep and undeniable judgment of somebody's behaviour or somebody's perspective? You know, what is it if it's not a projection of something from self? Well, it could be a few things. Firstly, you could be seeing a negative trait which exists within them so that you do not have to look at your part in the situation, and so that you don't have to look at what you could change. Because the thing that I always say about shadow work when it comes to other people and your connections with other people and your judgments of other people, I always say it's not always projection, but it is always about you. It's not always projection, but it is always about you. And what I mean by that is you can make it into an exploration of self, because shadow work is about self. It is not about other. It is about self, okay? It is a journey into selfhood. So whenever you judge somebody, whenever you dislike somebody, whenever you have conflict with somebody, you can first of all stand aside onto the slip road and ask yourself, is this projection? Is this something that I'm seeing in them because I've rejected it inside me? But even if it's not projection, it's still something that you need to deal with, and it's still something that can teach you something incredibly important about yourself. Because projection or not, all of your judgments must come back to a place of self, because you cannot change the other person. You cannot live their life for them. You cannot alter their thoughts and their perceptions and their behaviours. You can't. You straight up cannot. You can't. And when you try to, it is a fool's paradise. It is a fucking waster's dream ticket. There's no point. There's no point. You need to stop that. So shadow work is just, it's the majestic art of bringing stuff back to self. You may not be projecting necessarily, but if you are so embroiled in your judgment and your dislike and your anger, then you are missing the chance to do great work on the self, and you are definitely missing some key chances to do shadow work. So you might be looking at somebody's evident faults or evident negative tendencies, and the more that you focus on those tendencies, the more that you actually avoid looking at what is going on within you. What is going on within you might be a very different thing than what is going on with that other person, but the more time and energy you spend focusing on what's wrong with them, then the more you get to shirk your own work, right? The more you get to kind of wriggle out of your own accountability. So that could be happening. You might be finding that a person that you're really judging or disliking is actually exhibiting the behaviours of an abuser or a detractor. You might find when you really vehemently dislike somebody, it's because they remind you of somebody in the past who abused you or rejected you or treated you badly. Following on from that, another thing that could be happening if you really have a strong judgment for somebody in a negative way is that they could remind you of your past self. Okay, so they could actually be reminding you of times in your past when you exhibited those same negative behaviours or those same destructive tendencies, and you might be feeling some type of way about the fact that that kind of drags you back to those times when you were very much aligned with those things before you evolved or before you moved on or before you healed, and that can be a trigger, and sometimes you are just triggered, and then that can create a very strong negative response. When you have a really, really strong, overt judgment of somebody that is kind of distracting to you and is disturbing to you or is kind of bothering you, and it can be positive or negative, you know, if you're kind of fixated on somebody or overtly obsessed with somebody, or you feel like somebody is just 100% Shangri-La, cherry on top, and you will never compare to them, that can be just as destructive, right, as projecting on them in a negative way or feeling about them negatively. You always need to think, how do I bring it back to that place of self? So for example, if you really, really dislike a person in your life and you really feel like you're judging them, you might want to look at the behaviours that they exhibit and whether or not you continue to pursue people who exhibit those behaviours or attract people who exhibit those behaviours. And maybe that's where you need to learn a lesson. Maybe it's a case of looking at why you keep manifesting and attracting people like this, or why you keep going after them even though they make you feel angry. You know, why are they in your midst, as it were? Sometimes when you're really irritated by somebody and you really feel a lot of judgment towards somebody, it can simply be because They have chosen to live their life in alignment with vastly different principles to you, and you do not understand why. And this can be, you know, as simple as judging somebody who keeps the cleanliness of their house to a different standard, right up to judging the way somebody raises their children, or judging somebody who commits certain crimes, or, you know, any of those things. Like, there's a massive spectrum of different beliefs, philosophies, principles, ethics, morals, and when you stand fast behind yours, it can be really difficult actually to give any room and any credence whatsoever to people who have chosen to live their lives in a different way, you know. So often, as much as it is valuable to see that the seed of somebody else's bad behaviour is in you and needs to be worked out within you, sometimes it's just about seeing that somebody's chosen a different road to you, and you feel a lack of respect and a lack of trust for the choices that they've made and the road that they've chosen to go down. It irritates you. You think it's irresponsible. You think there's something unappealing about it. You don't understand how somebody could make those kinds of choices. You don't understand the value in it. You think it shows that somebody is fickle or shallow, or, you know, I mean, the list is endless. It goes on and on. It's basically about you valuing your decisions and your morals and your principles and your ethics over the ones that other people have chosen. And that can be very basically what it is. You could think about what would be a better way of handling people like that, or handling the exhibition of certain tendencies. So instead of using your energy to judge and dislike and mock and berate or criticise, you can actually pull that energy back to self. And in your shadow work, you can ask yourself, what do people like this have to teach me about the way I walk in the world? What do people like this have to teach me about the way I can handle situations like this and people like this in the future? Like, what do I have to learn? Somebody that pisses you off and gets on your last fucking nerve is always a wondrous teacher for you. They are always a guru for you. Say 1,000 thank yous for those mother bitches, because they are here to teach you something, okay? And as annoying as that is, as piss irritating as that is one of the keys to shadow work, and that's why you've got to be strong to show up for that shit. That is why shadow work is not for the faint-hearted, and that is why I salute everybody who does it. Because projection or not, looking at people that annoy you and get on your last nerve and seeing a guru, seeing an opportunity to learn, seeing an opportunity to bring something back to self, that is strong. That is strong. And if you are doing that, and if you are living your life in the essence of what it means to be a shadow worker, then you are my people, you are my tribe. And I thank you so, so, so much for being here with me, and thank you for listening to this very garbled explanation. And like I said, I might need to circle back around to it. Hit me up in the comments section with any questions that you have, and I'll try to get to them. And yeah, if you want to come along with me during the month of February for 29 Shadows, you can now book the exclusive video course at the full price. All you do is book, you go over to kellyannemaddox.com, hit the 29 Shadows tab, I'll leave the link for you in the doobly-doo. Check out all the details about it. You can watch my introductory video, which explains a lot about what you get with the course, but essentially it's 29 days, 29 videos, plus the bonus introductory video that I send out on the 31st of January. You pay, you get your email address placed onto a mailing list, and you just have the videos come in every day. You don't need to do anything else. I have it all set up. I'll just add your email address to the mailing list, and you get to receive 29 days worth of shadow work wisdom, contemplations, journal prompt ideas, questions, themes. You know, every single video has a specific theme. I'm going to be talking about sex, I'm going to be talking about death, I'm going to be talking about money, anger, all the biggies. So yeah, get onto the mailing list, come and join me. And if you're already on the mailing list, thank you, and I can't wait to be in your inbox. It's a sacred place to be, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be there. And yeah, so much love until next time. Blessed be.